Hey guys, Pixelweaver here, and welcome to a much different style of video. Today I am in front of the camera, I do realize that, yes, and we are doing a completely different genre of video. My mic, holy crap, can you not? Okay, so, the gaming content, I think we can all agree it is kind of declining. After my montage, I was like, you know, I'm kind of not fully done with this, but a little bit, and that is because I can't always think of random things to say while gaming. That's just hard for me. I know a lot of people who are amazing at that, but for me that just does not come naturally, and in my opinion I think it ends up sounding kind of boring. So today I'm doing a tech style video, PC type thing. I've wanted to do this for a long time, and I'm glad that I finally am going to do it. So yeah, let's get started. Today we are going to be comparing and reviewing 4 of these hard drives. Well, one of them is an external drive, just, you know, throw in there, but whatever. We have a Samsung SSD 850 EVO. This is the 250 gigabyte version. Very light. I'm going to talk about weight for each of these. This is like, it's like completely empty practically. It's just like an aluminum little box. That's what it feels like. So yeah, and then next up we have a Kingston SSD now V300 120 gigabyte version. This is what I boot off of. This is what I keep my program files on. That's a weird, I realize that's a really weird way to do things. I will probably be changing that. I was going to put them in RAID 0, however I figured, well, I'd have to reset them, and my operating system is on here, so that would be kind of hard. And yeah, I realize there's a light shining straight down on me. If I turn it off, all 3 of these lights would turn off and it'd be dark. I don't know what to do about that. I'll try to fix that in the future. But yeah, and then next up we have a Toshiba Canvio Basics 1 terabyte external hard drive. Sorry, the label's upside down. I was like, how do I... it's alive, guys. It's alright. I realize there's a bunch of junk on my desk right now. I'm kind of trying to hide that, because I did rip these straight out of my computer. To review, I do not have spare drives lying around. I do not have this many spare drives lying around. And then finally, we have a Toshiba DT01 ACA 100. This is a 1 terabyte, 7200 RPM internal hard drive. Alright, so I ran Crystal Disk Mark benchmarking software, 64-bit version. I ran it for each of these 4 drives, and I ran it for 3 tests, 1 gigabyte each, and that was the sequential Q32T1, 4K Q32T1. I have no clue what that stands for, by the way. Don't ask me. I'm probably going to search that later. It honestly makes no sense to me. And we have the regular sequential and the regular 4K. The 4K stands for 4 kilobytes. So that's like, 4K is a lot more practical. Well, not practical. It's a much smaller file size, of course, compared to like 1 gigabyte, I guess. So we test it when moving smaller files around. That's good for knowing, because usually you do move that smaller files around. Okay, so the Samsung 850 EVO is priced at, sorry, I did just search this, I realize, priced at $90.51. And then this Kingston SSD now V300 120 gigabyte SSD is $41.99. So we have $90.51, yeah, $90.51 and $41.99, big price difference. And then this external Toshiba hard drive is priced at, let me search it real quick. This is priced at $54.99, and it is, you know, more storage, you know. 01 ACA 100. Yes, and this is a 32 megabyte cache, by the way, and this is at $48.96. $48.96. $54.99. I'm gonna write these down somewhere. On the screen. $41.99. And finally, $90.51. I realize how prepared I am for these. I do realize that. Thank you for pointing that out. So let's take a look at our benchmarks. Okay, so to start off, we are going to look at the sequential Q32T1 read speed test. The Toshiba external disk scored at 87.94 megabytes per second. The Toshiba internal hard drive scored at 175.9 megabytes per second. The Kingston internal SSD scored at 471.3 megabytes per second. Huge difference there between the hard drives and the SSDs. And then the Samsung 850 EVO scored at 533 exact megabytes per second. Okay, so now looking at the same test but with the write speeds, the Toshiba external drive was 83.28 megabytes per second. The Toshiba internal hard drive was 133.4 megabytes per second. The Kingston internal SSD was 177 megabytes per second. And the Samsung 850 EVO was taking a huge lead at 505 megabytes per second, almost quadruple what the Kingston SSD had scored. Alright, so now we are looking at the 4K Q32T1 read speeds. Once again, this is the 4 kilobyte, very small file size move. This would represent small file moves, of course. The Toshiba external drive was very small at 0.47 megabytes per second. 0.47. The Toshiba internal hard drive was 0.91, not much better. The Kingston SSD was 75.4 megabytes per second, that's okay. And the Samsung 850 EVO, once again, double the amount of the Kingston SSD at 154 megabytes per second 4K read speed. Now once again, the same thing as last time, the 4K Q32T1 write speeds. The Toshiba external drive was 0.795 megabytes per second, which was faster than the read speed, which was surprising to me. Same thing with the Toshiba internal hard drive, scoring at 1.044 megabytes per second. Kingston SSD was at 81.97, and the Samsung 850 EVO was at 143.2 megabytes per second. The internal hard drive and external hard drive both had write speeds, along with the Kingston SSD, that were faster than read speeds, which is kind of an unusual thing, I would say. You don't see that as often. And it was normal for the Samsung 850 EVO, the write speed was slower than the read speed. Okay, so now coming in at the next test, we have the plain sequential read speed, which sequential once again is the large file type form factor, I guess you could say. The Toshiba external drive had 88.5 megabytes per second. The Toshiba internal hard drive had 178.5 megabytes per second. Kingston SSD scored 414.6 megabytes per second, and the Samsung 850 EVO once again in the lead, of course, with 502.2 megabytes per second. Now for the sequential write speeds. This one was another surprising one. The Toshiba external drive was low once again at 82.19 megabytes per second. However, the Toshiba internal hard drive scored faster than the Kingston SSD at 177.2 megabytes per second compared to the Kingston SSD's 117 megabytes per second. I found that unusual. It's strange that an internal hard drive would beat an internal SSD, especially with a large file type write speed. That was odd. Samsung 850 EVO, once again, 470 megabytes per second in the lead. Alright, so now moving on into the plain 4 kilobyte or 4K read speeds. Toshiba external drive 0.33 megabytes per second, Toshiba internal hard drive 0.4 megabytes per second, Kingston SSD 17.88 megabytes per second, and the Samsung 850 EVO was at 33.44 megabytes per second. All of these scored very low, and that's definitely something to take note of when picking out a storage option for your PC. When you're moving small file types around, all of them score drastically lower amounts of read speeds, and then next we will take a look at the write speeds. We'll see if those small files will be moved around any faster when being written. Okay, so the 4K write speeds are in, and they are faster, luckily. Toshiba external hard drive was 0.763 megabytes per second. Toshiba internal hard drive was 0.923 megabytes per second. Kingston SSD was very fast, 74.36 megabytes per second. And the Samsung 850 EVO was at 83.62 megabytes per second. Once again, another case where the write speeds are much faster than the read speeds. But this is definitely better. So if you are moving files from one drive to another, they will be going this fast. However, when you are opening them, it will be a little slower. But that doesn't usually matter as much when opening the files. Okay, so after spitting out all that information at you, we're going to be looking at some of the price per gigabyte options here. So the Toshiba external and internal hard drives both were 5 cents per gigabyte. They are they are both hard drives, and they are both 1 terabyte hard drives. So that is why they scored so low compared to the Kingston SSDs, 35 cents per gigabyte, and the Samsung 850 EVOs, 36 cents per gigabyte. Once again, take note of the size of them. The Kingston SSD is 120 gigabytes, and the Samsung 850 EVO is 250 gigabytes. Probably this will be less for both of them with a higher amount because of deals and whatever. Alright, so now we'll be looking at something a little bit different. This is kind of like the price per performance. It's the price per megabyte per second. That is odd, however, the Toshiba external drive scored at 63 cents per megabyte per second because it scored so low in the read and write speeds. The Toshiba internal hard drive was 28 cents per megabyte per second, and the Kingston SSD was 9 cents per megabyte per second. Definitely a much better deal than all the other ones. Whereas the Samsung 850 EVO was the second lowest at 17 cents per megabyte per second. Now, the previous price per performance was on the sequential Q32 T1 read. That is kind of what they're advertised based on, so that's why I chose that one. And now we're going to be looking at the sequential Q32 T1 write price per megabyte per second. Okay, so the Toshiba external hard drive was at 66 cents per megabyte per second for the write speed, even higher. The Toshiba internal hard drive was 28 cents per megabyte per second, which was exactly the same, I believe. The Kingston SSD, internal SSD, jumped up from low 7 cents, I believe it was, or maybe it was 9 cents, up to 31 cents per megabyte per second, because the write speed is a little bit slower for that. And the Samsung 850 EVO was the lowest at 18 cents per megabyte per second. Okay, so I hope you all have learned something from those charts that I showed you, and I wanted to make a real quick disclaimer. No, I'm not sponsored by Samsung, Toshiba, or Kingston to say anything about their products. As much as I would love to be, I am not, and I am recording this on a different day, as you can see. My ground loop noise isolator thing, that removes static and high-pitched sounds, was, or it sort of muffles them. It was partially disconnected. I was just checking my connection there. And resulted in constant static. So, sorry about that. I kind of forget what I was saying, but yeah. Pretty much I'm not here to make a decision for you on what storage option to buy for your computer, but I hope you have been able to take all those factors into account and can make a reasonable and logical decision yourselves. I personally, if you do want a recommendation from me, I would say if you're looking for something portable, well actually, if you're looking for something portable, I would still buy an SSD, because you can buy their SATA and the power to the SATA to USB cables. In fact, I have one. Let me grab that. Okay, so yeah, you can buy these cables. They're really cheap, like $5 on Amazon. And instead of a separate SATA and SATA power connector, it's just one full connector that goes to USB 3.0. So this does not work on Mac. However, MacBooks recognize the drive as something that should be internal, sort of. It doesn't like recognize the file system, I guess. So that is one downside to that. So if that does relate to you, I would just go with the Toshiba Canvio Basics portable drive, because although it does have such low read and write speeds, it doesn't feel like it, I'd say. It really doesn't feel like it goes that slow, which, yeah, that is kind of odd to say, but yeah. So I hope you all have enjoyed the video. Hope you all have learned something. I will see you all in the next one. Have an amazing rest of your day. I'll probably be doing more of these style videos in the future, so look out for that. Subscribe if you do want to see more like this. Remember to drop a like if you did enjoy the video. I will see you all in the next one, and bye-bye.